Oh shit. Here we go again.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
I'm already going to do that joke. I'm already going to do that joke.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I've got a joke about microtransaction, and it was going to be about my tiny, tiny, pointless, withered penis.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer every night.
Alright, so we made it all in about 2 minutes before Jim here makes a fucking joke about their dick. Ugh, Jesus fuck. And we get it. We get it. You're trans. Why is that like within the first 30 seconds of every video you do, I swear you have to mention the fact that you're trans or throw some type of notion into it that you have transitioned. Like, nobody cares. No one cares.
It's not withered.
Shut the fuck up. No one cares.
Microtransactions, we're talking about those, which is a subject we don't often tackle on the Jimquisition. On the subject of tackle, mine is fine. I just want to assure you all, it is disappointingly average.
Shut the fuck up. No one cares.
Adequate.
It is adequate, see? I've got a third-party review. It's adequate penis.
Several minutes into the video, and we are still talking about Jim's penis. Holy fuck, get to the game.
Resident Evil 4's remake is quite adequate as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, our definitions of adequate must be very different from one another, as well as the definition of, oh, I don't know, the vast majority of people who played the game. This isn't an adequate remake. Most people are calling this the best remake to have been done thus far, which, don't agree with that. I think there are other Capcom titles that have been remade, especially in the Resident Evil series, better than RE4 Remake. However, you can't really deny that the game is absolutely fantastic. Not just adequate, not just good. It's just amazing.
In fact, it's very good. But I tell you what isn't, is the microtransactions that they added, that a whole bunch of people are defending. What is this new thing, right, that I've seen people come up with, which, oh, they're microtransactions for a single player, that's not so bad. When did that become a new okay thing?
It almost seems like you think that people are excited for these microtransactions, right? It's like you think that we're happy about them. It's not that we're happy about them. It's not that we're defending them. We're saying that, hey, it's really not that big of a deal. We get it. It's just a common practice in the market at this point. Nobody's super over-the-top happy about it. Yeah, I believe, personally, less microtransactions, the better. If there's no microtransactions in a game, that's fucking fantastic. Thank you to that developer. However, I do not see much of a problem with microtransactions that are not used to skip things to get unlocked for like multiplayer, to give you some type of paid advantage, and it's not hiding content that is otherwise in the game like we have seen before, where games will release, take some of the best equipment or whatever and hide them behind a paywall or a loot box system. Like, we have seen that plenty of times. That's not what this is. This is a mechanic that's already in the game that is simply an upgrade system that you have to grind a little bit to get this finalized upgrade for the guns, right? That's all this is. And the grind hasn't changed. The grind feels good and it feels normal while playing the game. You don't unlock these upgrades too quickly or too slowly, right? It's right at that perfect good mix. Now, these microtransactions allow you to just completely skip that and just buy these upgrades if you really wanted to. Not really sure why you would. Personally, I don't even see the point of it. I'm just not really someone personally who really buys microtransactions to begin with. It's just not something I enjoy. I don't really care about skins. I don't really care about the perks of some of these microtransactions. But again, at least I can admit when they are good or bad, when they are predatory in nature or they are just there for a more ease of use factor. And this is definitely a more ease of use factor. This isn't predatory. This isn't them hiding something from you and making you pay to unlock it. This is meh at best. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Nobody's forcing it on you. Nobody is, throwing it in your face. Hey, buy this microtransaction right now. Hey, if you buy this, then you'll get this equipment, and it's completely, only the only way you can get it is through this microtransaction or through these loot boxes. No, it's an already in the game mechanic that you can pay to skip, I guess. Again, me personally wouldn't do it. If that's something you want to do, that's on you. Don't know why you are sitting here criticizing that or the people that do it, Jim.
When was it decided? Because I wasn't part of that meeting. I wasn't even given the minutes for the meeting where it was decided that microtransactions are okay if they're quote-unquote just in a single-player campaign. What the fuck is that? To say nothing of the people who, after all these years of debunking defences of microtransactions, are saying, well, Capcom's got to make some money somehow. Last I checked, they're selling the game for money. So anyway, we're talking about microtransactions this week, not my dick.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
It's time to squirt my polemic paste deep into the quivering cavity of controversy.
What? What the fuck?
So grab a spoon and slurp it up, you fucking paste twats!
Oh, hell no!
Stop it. Get some help.
Resident Evil 4's remake is very good. Very good indeed. Is it as good as the original? Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, in addition to being old, but I must say it doesn't have quite the charm of the original. It's scarier, it's modernised, it's got more content, but it's not as humorous, not as memorable, and absolutely positively nowhere near as camp. That's the important thing. Resident Evil 4 was camper than a van. It was still spooky, but its joyous embrace of action movie cliches and silly one-liners was just bloody entertaining. For me, the dorky lines, cheeky banter between Leon and the antagonists, and the almost Metal Gear Solid-esque commitment to its own bullshit was always the distinguishing feature of Resident Evil 4. Now, it could be argued that we don't need the remake to be any of that, since we already have it. And that's very valid.
Yeah, I tend to agree that Resident Evil 4 Remake doesn't have to be the original. I think it's actually a really bad remake. For example, the Dead Space 1 remake, I think that's a perfect example of when you leave too much the same. At that point, you're no longer remaking the game, you're remastering. The difference between a remake and a remaster is a remaster just updates graphics, audio, etc. Maybe changes a little bit of controls to make them a little more ease of use, right? Maybe update them with the times, especially if it's a super old game and it had a much outdated control scheme. Then that's a remaster. That it doesn't change a whole lot from the original. It's just bringing the old game up to date, basically. So that's kind of what I feel Dead Space 1 had. It was more of a remaster than a remake, because it didn't change enough about the game to constitute a remake in my mind. Now, Resident Evil 4 is definitely a remake. It's completely changed the entire tone of the game, and honestly, I'd say for the better. Again, I would actually kind of agree that it doesn't feel quite like Resident Evil 4. It doesn't seem to be that, as you put it, campy game, right? There's not nearly as much playful banter between characters or little quippy one-liners that get thrown around, and it's a much more serious and darker tone. Now, I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I wouldn't say it's a good thing. I think that it worked well for Resident Evil 4 Remake, and we still have the original that is so beloved. We don't have to say we want one or the other. But in Capcom's defense, I would be more annoyed if they came out with a remake and then changed almost nothing and then just basically re-released Resident Evil 4 to us.
I think the remake is in general a great game, one that doesn't replace the original, but provides an alternative take. And that's just fine. If you asked me which of the two I prefer though, It's gonna be the game that has this shit.
No way, Leon.
Way. I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt.
I'm starting to get worried.
Don't you mean lonely? Rain or shine, you're going down. Sounds more like an alien invasion if you ask me.
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off? Hey, it's that dog.
I've been expecting you, my brethren.
No thanks, bro. Sadler, you're small time.
Where's the satisfying sound of one's impalement?
Sorry to hear that. I'm sending you a playing manual.
Well, I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics, too.
How rude!
Whoa there, Jim. Your super left liberal friends know that you just endorsed a message of sexualizing a female in a video game. You really sure you want to put that on YouTube, Jim?
Crappy script.
It should keep you busy.
Can't remember the name, huh? A senior moment, perhaps.
Oh,
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
There's one other vitally important distinction between Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 4 Remake that'll see me eternally favour the classic. The original Resident Evil 4 didn't have fucking microtransactions.
What are you buying?
Now, until a few days ago, this was not a factor, for indeed Resident Evil 4 Remake didn't have microtransactions either. Capcom, the sly devils cockends that they are, didn't launch RE4 Remake with the blasted things. They waited. They waited until the game reviews were all published. They waited until 4 million people had bought it. They waited weeks before smuggling them into the game alongside the release of an update that added the beloved Horde-style Mercenaries mode. The microtransactions are unrelated to the Mercenaries, which I have to say is pretty bloody fun. No, the microtransactions pertain to the single-player campaign, offering paid upgrades that could be quite...
Okay, I'm sorry. What? Paid? Oh my god, I don't think you actually understand what that means. Okay, but seriously. By, like, definition, you can't really have a pay-to-win system in a single-player game, Jim. That's not how it works. So the term pay to win is usually applied to a multiplayer game with microtransactions, such as hiding really good gear behind specific microtransactions. Take Battlefield 3, for example, and its premium pass. Right there for a while, the premium guns were objectively just way more overpowered than anything you could unlock generically in the game. So that would be a good example of pay to win. It's a game where you get an actual advantage over other people by spending real money. It is not you getting an advantage over AI in a single player game. That is probably one of the dumbest things you've said
Basically,
yet, Jim.
starting at prices of $2.99, you can buy special upgrade tickets that allow you to obtain any weapon's final upgrade regardless of how upgraded it otherwise is. Normally, you have to buy a gun's stat improvements with in-game cash one by one until it's fully upgraded, at which point a final exclusive upgrade is unlocked and you can buy it at a high price.
So, Jim, you see how you even stated it in the video that you don't actually have to buy these microtransactions? You don't have to use these. Like, this isn't the only way that you can upgrade those weapons. You just said so yourself that normally you buy all of the upgrades, and then that unlocks a final upgrade, a final special upgrade, right? So you could do everything in the game and unlock it normally than you can with just this microtransaction. Like, you see how this is way less of a deal than what you're trying to make it out to be. Like, this, it isn't that important. Why are you so up in arms about this? This isn't people being evil about microtransactions. This is just, yeah, it's a little bit of greed, but hey, some people don't have the time to fucking play the game. Maybe they just want to buy it. I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't mean that Capcom is evil or wrong for doing this.
An upgrade ticket fast tracks you to that final upgrade, giving it to you for free at any point in your chosen weapon's progress. It doesn't fully upgrade the weapon, you'll still have to finish that job, but with final upgrades, mostly offering flat damage boosts or otherwise powerful enhancements, getting it early is a huge difference maker for any given gun. Now, you can get these tickets in-game, but doing so is such a grind that I'm actually annoyed I didn't see all of this coming. You can't buy tickets from the merchant. You have to trade spinels for them. I've never actually looked up how to pronounce that. Anyway, you have to trade those, an extra little currency that is given in batches of 2 to 5 for completing side quests, or very, very rarely found individually while playing. Now, most items that can be traded for using spinels, such as treasure maps, rare consumables, or sellable valuables, cost anywhere between 3 and 5 of them, while higher cost items, like exclusive guns, can cost a princely 10. Actually, I think I got that math wrong. I think it's like, there's a gun that's 5, and another that I think was 8, and a attaché case is like 12, and then the point is the tickets are a lot, as we're about to discuss. Given the rate at which you earn the currency, these prices are pretty well balanced. The tickets, however, cost either 30 or 40 splumpadums.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not seeing why any of this is relevant or matters. You know, you literally state early on into this section of your video that you can indeed unlock the exact things that you are complaining about being a microtransaction. You can unlock these exact things in the game if you just play it. Again, these are just the tickets, right? If you wanna grind for the tickets, yes, that's quote unquote more difficult. However, just unlocking the gun upgrades within the game, playing it normally, just upgrading every stat of the weapon and then getting that final upgrade, that's just the same thing that has been throughout since the game got released. There's been no changes there. The only addition is these tickets that you can get these final upgrades way faster, and if you don't want to grind for them, for the fucking extra currency to get these tickets, you can go ahead and just pay some money for it. So what does it matter?
A price that requires saving up to such a degree that you'd have to really deny yourself other useful stuff to get them. Like I said, I'm pissed I didn't see it coming. The ticket prices felt exorbitant while playing, to the point where it genuinely struck me as oddly imbalanced. Sure, for what they do, they should be somewhat costly, but 30? I fully played the campaign, made it several hours into New Game Plus, did every side quest except that one I forgot where you go back and kill the dog. Not that one. And during that time, I was able to buy 1 ticket. And while I did trade Spinlay for other things, in order to just get that one, I had to hold off on other stuff first. It wasn't a huge deal, but it seemed odd. I should have guessed. I'm cynical enough, and I've made the game industry sneaky bullshit my business for long enough that the suspicion should have crossed my mind. Looking back, especially given Capcom's predilection for utterly contrived microtransactions, it was clitting obvious. What's truly gotten to me this week, however, wasn't Capcom doing a thing that I wouldn't put past them, but the creepy number of people lining up to pathetically defend this shit. In a true reminder that my years of work in the field of industry bullshit is futile, and that over a decade of comprehensive arguments will ultimately fall on a world of willfully blocked ears, seeing the same old debunked defenses and corporate jizz guzzling was rather fucking disheartening.
Oh god, there's just so much to unpack here. Okay, so, according to you, Jim, there's just a quote-unquote creepy amount of people coming out of the woodwork to defend Capcom's actions here with these microtransactions. Okay, where? How about some examples? Give it, like, any type of examples. I haven't really seen anybody defending these microtransactions like in the sense that you're trying to make it sound. You're trying to make it sound like people are really happy about these microtransactions. That's not what's happening. People are listening to your attacks on them, these absolutely ridiculous statements that you're making, and saying, hey, that's not even the case. These aren't that bad. These are meh. We don't really care. Like, yeah, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, would prefer no microtransactions be in a video game. However, I can't really complain about these ones. They don't do anything. Like, they don't give you anything special. They don't hide content away. It's a single player game. It doesn't give you an advantage over other players. Like, if you're going to do microtransactions, this seems like a pretty legitimate, viable way to do it. So where are all these people that are defending it? And also, your work in the industry, what work in the industry, Jim? I barely have ever heard of you to begin with, let alone what you've done for the industry, because all I've seen from you is absolute bullshit. You don't even seem like you play video games with the amount of bullshit that you spew in all of your different videos talking about the gaming industry. It doesn't seem like you have the faintest idea. You sound like a Kotaku fucking article writer over here trying to fucking tell us what video games are not, what are bad practices, good practices, what good games and are bad games. Again, refer to the Hogwarts Legacy. You won't even touch that game because it has some type of connection to a quote-unquote transphobic. So therefore, the game is inherently evil. That's just insanity. But you're going to tell us about your time in the industry, your experience, why we should listen to you as the voice of reason for all gamers. Meanwhile, literally in the video that I'm talking about with Hogwarts Legacy, you complain about the community of gamers. You allude to the community of gamers being very gated, very guarded from trans people, homosexuals, etc. Like, you just want to sit here and call gamers as a collective a bunch of things, but at the same time, you want to be our voice of reason. You want to expose the wicked industry that we partake in. How about you show any respect to the community first? If you can't at least give us like factual, real information, at least give the community respect, then maybe someone will fucking listen to you. I sure as hell won't. But yes, let's go ahead and take a look at your quote-unquote contributions to the community, the gaming industry, just in the past few weeks, shall we? Let's start off with JRPGs. Essentially, it's now racist and it's bad to call them JRPGs because the distinction between a standard role-playing game and a JRPG doesn't actually matter, right? We should just call them all RPGs according to Jim. That's the general summary of how Jim feels about that one. Then you, of course, have the one that I did the video on already, which is essentially that Hogwarts Legacy is transphobic, and if you play it, you are a transphobic piece of shit, which, you know, because how dare you enjoy a fucking wizard game? How fucking dare you? And of course, we have this one about essentially accessibility in video games, which I'm all for. I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. The more people that can play video games, the better. But you even go into detail of every game should be for everyone. No. For one, it's not game developers' responsibility to make games for everyone. It is not their job. They want to make games for as many people as they can. But a lot of games have multiplayer components. They have competitive components that really don't mix well with accessibility options. A game that I love playing quite a bit, Counter-Strike, they've, messed around with accessibility options, but their hands are very tied. They're very limited in what they can do, not because they don't want more people to play the game. It is because they have a competitive scene to uphold. That's the main focus of the game, is competitiveness. And if you add more accessibility, as we have seen, it is way harder to keep the game competitive and not make it so that those accessibility options have some type of advantage, so then everyone will just play on those options. And it tends to make the game just busted in terms of balance. It completely ruins some competitive experiences. We've seen it in Counter-Strike. We've seen it in different mods that have tried to kind of work around with accessibility options. They tend not to work well. But according to you, Jim, that doesn't matter. The balance, you can just put them in different lobbies. Yeah, you could. But the issue is that how many of these people that have the exact same disabilities that cause them to have this disadvantage, how many of those people can you group in one lobby in a singular game? Especially something like, let's say, Counter-Strike or Call of Duty. How many people have this exact form of colorblindness or whatever else may be the issue, right? You can't tell me that there are just thousands of people playing with these exact same disabilities where you can create these lobbies focused around their accessibility. You can't tell me that all these people are just playing at any given moment, that you could just fill these lobbies with ease, because it's not realistic. So you want game developers to sit there and work really hard on some accessibility options that most likely won't even get used in a lot of these games. Again, I'm all for accessibility options in especially single-player games. I see no issue with that. If the developer wants it, then sure, put it in there. I want more people to play video games. I'm completely fine with that. But do not try and force devs to do it. It's not their fucking job. They can pick what they want in their video game. And especially don't try and force it on competitive games, because we have seen that that does not work. You don't always get what you want, Jim.
Oh, these are fine. Just ignore them. Stop whining. Just grind if you don't want to pay. It's just optional. Listen to me while I condescendingly do game publishers' jobs for them by parroting their discredited propaganda verbatim like unpaid fucking marketing reps. It's not a direct quote, but honestly, the actual things people have said are borderline unbearable in just how smarmy, how ignorant, and just how plain fucking wrong they are, with a smugness that appears directly proportional to said wrongness in a beautiful example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. There are no good microtransactions. It doesn't matter how inconsequential they are. It doesn't matter how ethical they're trying to appear. An economy based in psychological manipulation that has a history of profiting via the targeted exploitation of neurodivergent players is inherently predatory, ableist, and just plain disgusting.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
My God, how is it that you always just go off the deep end? Like, you'll be sitting here talking about something, and then all of a sudden you go from trying to make reasonable points and not being that psycho to just fucking right off the fucking deep end. It's insane. You went from there are no good microtransactions to they are predatory in nature inherently because they quote unquote target and exploit neurodivergent players. What? So, all right. So let's get this straight. If there is anybody who could possibly be taken advantage of in any type of way by any type of marketing, by any type of service, by any type of product, we should therefore no longer offer those things, right, Jim? So, like, let's take drinking, for example, right? There are people who struggle with alcoholism, so therefore no one should ever make alcohol again. That should just be banned across the entire world. They should never, ever, ever, ever have another drop of alcohol made. How about gambling, Jim? There's people that claim gambling addiction is a mental disorder of sorts, right? So therefore we can't have casinos anymore. We can't have betting. We're not allowed to have that anymore because by your own logic, if it could possibly take advantage of somebody, it therefore should not be done. Because it doesn't seem like this is something that is being targeted by anybody. Like, nobody is outreaching. The game is not outright fucking throwing this in your face. It's not outright saying, hey, buy these microtransactions. It's a very subtle thing that's in the background. So, what is your logic here? It doesn't make any fucking sense. By your own logic, we can't have a vast majority of the things that we have right now. By your own logic, we shouldn't even have video games, because people are prone to procrastinate and use video games as an escape so that they don't have to deal with real world responsibilities. Well, that enables them, that targets and exploits them, right, Jim? So we should just take away video games at this point. Just fuck it, throw it all away. Throw it all away. I fucking give up. Clearly we can't have fucking anything that anybody enjoys, because somebody may be taken advantage of. We have the fear that might happen. The fear of what may happen if somebody could possibly be taken advantage of. Oh, dear God. You want to live in a fucking bubble in society. You don't want nobody to ever have any hardships. You want everybody to have just cookie cutter lives, don't you? That way there can't ever be anybody slightly disadvantaged. You are an absolute lunatic. And this is just another really good reason and example of why not only myself, but I'm sure many, many, many other people in the gaming community do not take you seriously, do not care about your quote-unquote contributions. You clearly don't have the faintest idea or grasp on reality. So why the fuck would we take anything you say seriously, Jim?
The targeted exploitation of neurodivergent players is inherently predatory, ableist, and just plain disgusting. By far the most common argument in favour of these microtransactions are, this isn't so bad. That mostly seems to be the sum fucking total of that argument too. It's not so bad. I mean, if you want to debate from a point of pure relativity, sure. In comparison to other examples, I'll grant you it's not so bad. It's not fully gating content behind a paywall. It's not gambling-based loot boxes. It's not among the most extreme examples of vulturine profiteering we've seen over the years, but I'm not going to indulge the fallacious suggestion that not bad is the same as good. Not bad isn't good, and no microtransactions are good, because there are no good microtransactions. Sure, this is different than FIFA's downright sick, dangerous grift, but I'll tell you what it's not different than: the slimy little time-saver boosts hawked by the likes of Ubisoft. The little purchases that allow players to, as companies love to say,
skip the grind.
The grind these companies deliberately designed and could have not included in the first place.
I'm just gonna go ahead and come out and say that I have not really seen many games that specifically design a grind just to then push microtransactions. I'm not saying it isn't done, but it is a very, very big rarity in the gaming community, and those games are usually immediately just shot down and hated by the vast majority of players, right? This isn't some like overwhelming problem with these time save microtransactions. We have been fighting against microtransactions mostly from companies such as like EA that will actually physically hide content behind them. That's mostly what we've been complaining about. I don't see these other microtransactions as that big of an issue. And you want to talk about skipping the grind that they could have just not included in the first place. Well, Resident Evil 4 didn't include the grind to then sell you microtransactions. This is something that has been in the video game from the original, except for the final upgrade. Yes, that is different. But I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 8 had these special final upgrades, didn't they? Something like that. I don't remember that having a microtransaction to skip that. And nobody's sitting here fucking complaining about that game having a grind, right? So your argument that they could have just not included it in the first place, why? The game is still well designed. There is no real like bad grind to this game. It still feels well paced. It feels like you get these upgrades when you should. But if you want to skip that, if you don't feel like putting in the time, because some people really do genuinely think that time is the same as money. So if they're going to spend their time, they may as well get some of that back. You know, they don't want to spend all that time, so they'll rather spend the $3, right? That's not my thinking, but I don't speak for fucking everyone, Jim. Apparently you do. There is no real artificially created grind in this game specifically. Alright, Resident Evil 4 Remake does not have a grind just to sell you microtransactions. Nobody had cared about the grind in this game until microtransactions were released. Everybody said the game was well-paced and felt fine. Nobody cared that there was a grind for upgrades for the guns until microtransactions were pushed out. So is the problem the grind or the microtransactions? Because I've made arguments against both, that you don't really need to have this up in arms opinion about, where you think that Capcom is these evil, scummy company that is only doing this specifically to make money. Yes, they're going to make money off these microtransactions, but not in the slightest scummy way that we see places like EA do it. So why are you bitching?
Time-saver microtransactions are when game companies sell you a solution to a problem they created for the sole reason of selling you a solution. It's a tacit admission by said company that they made a game less fun on purpose, that they deliberately made an aspect of the game so tedious and shit that it's literally worth paying money to play it less. It should be seen as an instant mark against a video game, but the industry's propaganda mill has been so insistent in its spin that we're still supposed to think this is a positive thing, in some sort of perverse opposite day charade. We're supposed to think that skip the grind is a good excuse, and not sheer self-indictment.
And once again, we're talking about things that have absolutely nothing to do with Resident Evil 4 Remake. Again, because this is not a thing that occurred in Resident Evil 4. They didn't create a problem to have a solution to sell you later. This game was designed in the same way that the original was with the upgrade system. It's not super grindy, it's not ridiculously hard to get the upgrades, it is normal pacing, and you can just pay to skip that pacing if you really want. I agree, any game that creates this super hardcore grind that is just so terrible that you'd rather pay for it than actually just do the grind, yes, that's bad game design, and those developers probably won't be around very long. I don't understand where you're getting this, that this is just common practice that devs do. I do not see it. The only thing I can really think of is maybe the Battlefield series. Getting a lot of the guns in that are very grindy, really, if you want a specific one that you want down the road. But even then, it's a fun grind. It's entertaining. You just play the game normally and you will unlock these things. I don't see the comparison. I don't see where you're getting that this has anything to do with Resident Evil 4 Remake, for one, and two, I just don't see this in the industry. And for somebody who supposedly has such deep ties and connections in the industry and has been around for so long and done so much for our great community of gamers, I'm wondering how it is that you can't even show us what you're talking about. You can't give an example. You think RE4 is an example, but it's not. So what's a real example of it then? Come on, with all your vast knowledge of the gaming industry, giving us an example of a game like you're talking about should be easy, should be off the top of your head, right, Jim?
As I've thoroughly explained in previous work, time-saver microtransactions are actually among the more insidious ones, despite how much they're marketed as among the most benign. They prey upon more impulsive, less patient players, and that makes autistic gamers and/or gamers with ADHD especially vulnerable to them. If you're neurotypical, it's easy to shrug this all off by simply saying just don't buy them. But like I've said before, if you've never been tempted by microtransactions, congratulations, you're not the one they're preying on. Hard to feel targeted if you're not the target. Oh, but if publishers do ever find a way to get under your skin, mark my words, they will. Besides which, the alleged stupidity and uselessness of Resident Evil 4 Remake's particular microtransactions isn't the defense people think it is either. See, some have tried to say these premium tickets are okay because of how little you need them, that getting a gun's final upgrade is easy enough to do using in-game currency, and it only gets easier if you use only a small number of weapons to begin with. It's the same argument I saw defending the little purchases in Devil May Cry 5, my criticism of which pissed off Capcom simps to such a degree, some of them still whine about the time I dared say it was a shitty move for a game I ultimately loved. But okay, let's go with the idea, shall we? Let's go with the idea that the microtransactions in Resident Evil 4 Remake are so completely fucking unnecessary as to be pointless. Let's say they're so easy to ignore that their inclusion is such a non-factor, they might as well not be there. Okay, so why are they there then? Because, if you ask me, selling something useless, pointless, and wholly unnecessary is an act I'd quite honestly call a fucking scam. If you think that the microtransactions are worthless, you're saying Capcom's selling a bill of goods, therefore you have to logically admit that Capcom is outright swindling anybody who buys them. Now please, tell me, how is that any better? How is it something we should be okay with? Try to answer that and stay fashionable. Oh, DMC5 just sold you currency that the campaign already drowns you in. That's not so bad. Yes, that is bad. That's a con, for God's sake. The way Capcom is doing it is akin to selling river water to a trout. It's selling snow to a Yeti. It's selling incompetence to Bethesda. That's potentially even more of a swindle than if they sold you a currency you couldn't get in-game. At least that would have some twisted sense of contrived worth. Microtransactions are either useful enough that their inclusion is a paywalling, railroading racket, or useless enough that their inclusion is a spurious, fraudulent rip-off. There is no good way to spin it, because there are no good microtransactions. Are you getting the point now? The point is that there ain't no attempt to spin this shit that I won't see through. In case you were wondering, no, you really can't win with me on this. You can stick up for Capcom, you can go after me, but there's not a millimetre of ground I'd begin to consider conceding to your nonsense. There is nothing you can say in favour of Capcom's fuckery that will convince me, since I'm so predisposed to being unconvinced. In fact, I'm happy to admit that I will never engage in a discussion about the merits of in-app purchases in good faith, because they are so inherently, so comprehensively meritless that admitting my own bad faith, that luxuriating in the broadcast of my own predisposed bias, does nothing to make my arguments less credible, because they're just that damn good.
Right on. So if they're pointless, why are you complaining about them? Just like, none of your arguments actually make any sense, Jim, because the main argument against or the main argument for the microtransactions, somewhat like in defense of them, is that they don't target anybody, they don't hurt the game in any way, they're simply there as an option for people who just don't want to actually play through getting the upgrades. Or maybe they want to just randomly, like, see how it feels to play the game with, I don't know, like, fucking late game upgrades on all weapons. I don't know, and I don't care. I mean, I don't want to defend microtransactions. I don't want to have to do this, Jim, but I hate when people just spew bullshit and act like they know what they're talking about when they don't, and you so clearly don't know what the fuck you are talking about. So now I have to sit here and talk about microtransactions and half-ass defend them. I don't want to do that. Oh, God. So, there's no reason really to hate on these microtransactions, other than the fact that they're microtransactions. If you made that argument, I'd say, okay, fine, whatever, yeah, that's totally fine. That is your opinion. You just hate microtransactions. You think a game should be sold as a complete item and there be no microtransactions post-launch. Fine, whatever. That can be a valid opinion. But your whole thing of they are only there as predatory and targeting, and then try to make the defense of, oh, well, if they're so pointless, then why even bother selling them? They're not inherently just completely pointless. They serve some type of purpose, whether you want to admit it or not. And whether or not that's a good or bad purpose is not for you to say. Again, they are not targeting anybody. They are not being forced upon people. This whole fucking neurotypical, if you're a neurotypical, you don't get the feeling of wanting to buy these microtransactions, the pressure, the fucking temptation of it. That's ridiculous. Everybody at least has some temptation to it, typically. I mean, regardless of whether you're neurotypical or not. But then to say that because other people struggle with this temptation more, they just shouldn't exist. Again, you probably didn't pay attention, but my argument earlier from that would mean that we have to get rid of alcohol, gambling, gaming, literally anything that could be used as a crutch in any way that could have any type of like addictive properties or ableist properties. We would just have to get rid of all of it. We could not have any of these things. Gaming would just not exist under your own logic, right? So I don't understand what you're trying to say here, because neither of your arguments make sense. Either they're predatory and targeting people, or they're so pointless that they shouldn't exist. Neither of which have any merit to them. How are you this fucking delusional and then have the audacity to say that you have contributed so much to this industry, so much to the world of gamers? You are a fucking joke.
Returning to the sheer timing of these transactions' implementation, waiting until post-launch to slither them in has always been and will always be a straight-up dick move. It's pure rat fuckery. There are people who really don't want to buy video games with microtransactions in them for whatever reason. There are critics and influencers who feel a responsibility to let their audiences know when a game has them, or outright won't recommend such games, and it really lays an ethical dilemma at their feet when they've already made a recommendation. There are the aforementioned neurodivergent people who actively avoid such games to avoid exploitation attempts. I mean, if you publish a game and sell it to people who are vulnerable to microtransactions, and you let them get really invested in said game before springing said microtransactions on them, you're essentially an ambush predator.
Holy fucking shit. Yep. Yeah, man. My head. Man, oh man. Yeah, that's what they planned on doing. That's what they planned on doing, Jim. They planned on preying on these poor neurodivergent people that were going to release this top tier game that thousands and thousands and thousands of people wanted to play, and they were gonna lie in wait, like the sneaky, horrible human beings they are. They're gonna sit and wait for everybody to get hooked on the game, for everybody to become addicted to it, for everybody to just have to finish it. And then they're going to spring microtransactions on us. Horrible people. Jesus, let's come back to reality for a little bit, yeah? How about that? They released the game. Maybe they had intentions of releasing these microtransactions. Maybe they didn't upon release. I don't know. I'm not fucking Capcom developers, right? I don't know. Neither do you. As far as you know, this could be completely an afterthought. After the release, they could have just gone, hey, you know what, maybe the grind for the final upgrade for weapons is a little too long. Let's go ahead and give them this way to fucking skip it for people who just really don't want to put the time into the game to do that. You don't know how that came about. And I'm sick and tired of hearing this argument of you're preying on neurodivergent people. Again, see my argument for the past 3 times you fucking brought it up. We just can't have games then at that point, Jim. For fuck's sakes. You act like this is somebody is actually just committing genocide in the streets right now. It's not that serious. And again, I don't want to have to defend microtransactions, but I feel like I have to bring some sanity to your absolute bullshit. And you wonder why nobody wants to fucking listen to you and your fucking arguments? Because they're bullshit. None of your arguments were good. None of your arguments were solid in any way. If you're going to make arguments against microtransactions, if you're going to make arguments against anything, have solid arguments. Think through them first. A fucking 30-second sit down and using some common sense on your own logic would do wonders for you. Because I saw right through all of your fucking bullshit with ease. It's not hard to do. And again, I don't want to have to defend microtransactions. Why is that a thing I have to do right now? That is fucking, oh my god. I hate this. I hate myself. I hate Jim. I hate this whole fucking video. Yeah. There's not really anything left in this video. There is some that I'm going to cut. It is mostly just the same of Jim rambling on about, I don't even remember at this point. And then there is an outro that really has no information, no new arguments. It's the same old, but I am going to go ahead and bash my head into the wall for another couple hours so I can hopefully lose enough brain cells that I no longer have to think, that I no longer have to remember that these arguments were made by a sentient being and not like a toddler or something, like an actual fully grown adult, right? I just cannot. This is like the arguments that you would hear from a toddler that doesn't know how to use logical thinking in the slightest bit, right? And yet, this is somebody who's supposed to be the light into our dark, dark world of gaming, right? This is supposed to be the voice of reason. Well, that's gonna do it for me, guys. I will catch you all later. Until next time.